Start. Good evening. We're here at Granby's public forum in preparation of the special town meeting scheduled for Monday, the 28th of October. The purpose of this public forum is so the residents of Granby can ask more detailed questions, and we'll try to give them the appropriate answers. If we don't know the answers, we're going to be honest and tell you we don't know the answers, but it's something that we can write down and be prepared for at the special town meeting on Monday. Because none of us are perfect, but we just do the best we can. With that being said, I'm going to go article by article. The first article on the agenda for the special town meeting is right here, Article 1, to see if the town will vote to amend the bylaws of the town of Granby, Volume 3, Chapter 21, Zoning Bylaw, Section 5, Special Use Regulations and Performance Standard, Section 5.99, Large-Scale Ground-Mounted Solar Photovoltaic Installations, by amending subsection 5.99.1, purpose by renumbering, adding special permit granting and site plan review authority, and adding new subsections, parentheses C, term of employment, parentheses D, outside consultant review, as detailed in the planning board's report to the town meeting on October the 4th of 2019, or taken any other actions regards thereto. I was under the impression we'd have some handouts tonight, but I checked and I couldn't find any. I do know that Kathy Leonard had to leave early for a medical appointment, so I don't know if that went into it, but I don't know. So we're gonna wing it, and I'm gonna try and, if I don't lose my voice and empty all my throat lozenges here, we'll wing it through. Okay, basically with this one, we have a document here. We're talking solar bylaws to begin with. And I'll explode it as high as I can for Alex so he can see it. Now, what we have is here is what I just read. Amend section 5.99, large-scale ground-mounted solar voltaic installations. Subsections 5.991, the purpose of renumbering, adding special permit and granting, so on. Before we do that, I want to explain what a bylaw is, because a lot of people really don't know what a bylaw is. The legislator makes Massachusetts general laws. Well, you, the residents, make your bylaws of your community. The state does not make the bylaws because they use the term home rule. Every municipality is different to a degree. So when the state puts out a regulation, it's for all 351 cities and towns. Bylaws are specific. The voters of the town make the bylaws by a 2/3 majority. To change a bylaw, it takes a 2/3 majority. And if you break a bylaw, you can be cited by the town and charged with a misdemeanor offense. Actually, if you want to know that. And they do have some monetary, how do you want to say it? Fines, if you want. They could impose if they wanted to. With that being said, that's for all bylaws. Okay, now when you get to zoning bylaws under Chapter 40A, they're a little bit different, in as much as a lot of bylaws do not have specific Massachusetts general law conditions. A zoning bylaw has the two major conditions that you should be aware of. And by the way, just so you notice, there's a lot of communities that are jealous of the town of Granby right now because we have a moratorium in effect, allowing you people to create and amend, fix your bylaws before they go into effect. Because if you were to do what's called an A&R, which is approval not required, what that means, if you have a plot of land that you want to separate, you want to do something else with, but it meets all the current bylaws of the town. But before Hampshire County Deeds will accept it, you need the stamp for the Granby Planning Board. So that's why it's called approval not required. But you gotta get that stamp from the planning board, and the planning board has up to 21 days to make a decision whether it meets the bylaws or not. The other one is called, with the approval not required. If you do that on a piece of property, the current bylaws are good for you for 3 years. So if they make any changes within the next 3 years, that being the town, that parcels that you did an A&R on live to the current bylaws for 3 years. Make sense? Then you have what's called a subdivision. You take a lot, you divide it in two. A subdivision is basically dividing a lot that doesn't meet the A&R requirements. You got to address it some way. When you do a subdivision of a lot, the bylaws protection for you is extended to 8 years. So if you look at the towns that are surrounding us now, as I stated, and I have some friends in Belchertown that are really upset that they didn't do it, they're being hit with all these A&Rs and subdivisions. So their bylaws on zoning really won't take effect for any 3 to 8 years on the parcels that they're getting A&Rs and subdivisions. If they don't have an A&R and subdivision on a plot, then their bylaws take effect as soon as the Attorney General says so. Are there any questions on the bylaws, on what they are and the restrictions, so everybody understands? Okay, I'll move on. On 5.99.1a, if you look up there, you notice in green. Okay, a group of us have gotten together, the Energy Committee, the general public, and so on, and we have proposed amendments to the planning board's bylaws. If anything is in black, that means no touch. Nobody's touched it. If something is highlighted in yellow, somebody within the group that we were in is probably going to request an amendment to that bylaw and delete that portion. So yellow means to delete their recommendation. And all these are from the planning board are recommendations. All these are from the general voter like yourself are recommendations. Until a vote is done and a 2/3 majority approves it, the bylaw is not changed. It stays the same. Okay? Within this, we are recommending that the special permit be added to the site plan review authority. The reason for that, we have a matter of law. And I love getting into laws. It's called the order of precedent. This right here is the schedule of uses, and I did not make a slide because I didn't think I'd need it, but maybe I should have for Monday night. On this, and I know you can't get it, Alex, so I'll read it. 3.5.20, large-scale ground-mounted solar. They have under RS, which is residential single-family, requires a special permit, a site plan approved by the planning board. So if we were allowed to go this article forward without adding the word special permit, it's a lawyer's dream, because now you have a conflict. And we went through this in the Bow and Gun Club. The rule of precedence in writing takes precedent over the table. But most people just go to the table because it's easier. So if you have a conflict between the two, the writing is going to take precedent. So in this particular case, the planning board would lose their special permit if challenged by somebody, even though they have it in the table. So we're recommending adding special permit to this particular paragraph, so our planning board has both special permit and site plan approval authority as defined in the table. Any questions on that one? Nope. Okay, then we will move right along. I am not gonna do anything on the solar bylaws that don't have yellow or green unless you want me to, because they are gonna be read exactly like that at the special town meeting. And to my knowledge, nobody's planning on amending them, so they would be as is. Unless you people want me to read each one, which I'll probably go hoarse before the night's out. But if you want me to, I will do it. But otherwise, I will just keep going like this. Also, under paragraph 5.99, we have paragraph 5.99.1.e. We are proposing that large-scale ground-mounted solar installations of 250 kilowatts or larger mounted on top of a canopy, which is a big carport, that is constructed over parking lots is allowed as of right with site plan approval by the planning board. This is the reason for that. Let me minimize this. Yeah, I think it's this one here, fall of 2019. Massachusetts Department of Energy Resources have a set of regulations that we all have to follow. No matter which one you are of the 351 cities and towns, you have to follow. Now, we also have 220 communities, which we are one, that is designated green community. So you have their requirements here, and they stack the green community on top of it. You never get a grant for nothing. So you gotta give up something, and you gotta enhance their requirements, which is basically better green things. Under this, you have to have a research and development facility of 50,000 square feet or more, or you could have a research and development facility for renewable energy for manufacturing, or more of 50,000 square feet. Or you could allow a 250 kW solar installation by right. One of those three must be allowed as of right to maintain your green community status. We've gone over it with the attorney. Our current bylaws do not meet the criteria of a research and development for renewable energy of 50,000 square feet or more as a right. It doesn't meet it. It also doesn't meet the renewable energy for manufacturing of 50,000 square feet or more as a right. So what we've done, because the Green Community Grant is $250,000 or $250,000 that we can put in for each year. We are going to recommend amending this paragraph to include this paragraph here. So we will be eligible to apply for a grant. Without this paragraph, we cannot apply for a Green Community Grant this year. That is the reason for this amendment on this particular article. Any questions? Silence is golden. Careful, Alex says the mic picks up everything. We will move on to the next solar bylaw. This is going to be a very interesting bylaw. Article 2 is the lot requirements. What kind of lot requirements are required to have a solar farm? The planning board is recommending a 100-foot setback from the road. As we can imagine ourselves here, any property that abuts a road or a street, if you want to call it that, is more prime land than any road or street that is behind the rest. The prime land is up front. That's where the houses are built, that's where the businesses are, unless they're gonna put new roads or they're gonna do estate lots or something else. Under our bylaws, to put a building up anywhere, you have to have a minimum of 40,000 square feet, which is a builder's acre. If we allow the planning board to go through with a 100-foot setback on the frontage of the roads, that'll only be 15,000 square feet, which means you can't build a building in front of the solar farm. You're losing prime revenue land for the town. Now, how does that affect an individual? Some individuals say, well, I can't afford to give up the 300 feet because I want to put a solar farm up. You can still do a solar farm. The only difference, and people don't realize this, you don't have to be the sole owner of the property to do a solar farm. It's called community solar. 2 or more property owners, as long as they're abutting, can create a solar farm. So the people are not being deprived by us moving it back to 300 feet, because we're looking at, and we did it in round numbers to bring it out to 40,000 square feet, because we want to keep Granby as it is in its country atmosphere. We want the individuals in town on their property to make revenue, and we want the town to make revenue. Because one of the poorest things we have in this town is the town lacks revenue. If anybody want to know the statistics, Granby, out of the 351 cities and towns, has the 46th highest tax rate at $19.36 per thousand than any other city or town in the state of Massachusetts. It's pretty high, 46 for our little town. Now, if you go back to the 2017 census, which is the latest one, 2020, we're having another one, I think it is. The average person in Granby makes $73,000 a year. So you're up here on your taxes and you're down here on your income. That does not match. One of the reasons that people ask, why is there such a disparity? According to the 2017 census again, 24.4% of the Granby residents are age 60 and over. So most of them are on Social Security. That's all the income they have. They cannot afford more tax hikes. They're having trouble making it as it is. So when we get some department saying we want more and more and more money, where is the money going to come from? The majority of the taxpayers that live in this town can't afford anymore. If you were to look at the annual town meeting, you get a book, get an annual financial report of everything that's going on with descriptions of what every community did. You look in the back of the book, you can see what all the employees of the town, whether they're with the highway department, the police department, the fire department, the school, whatever, their salaries are in there. They're way over $73,000 each. And when we do some negotiations with people on their contracts and bargaining units, one of the questions I like to ask is, do you live in Granby? You know what their answer is? No, I can't afford to live in Granby. But they can afford to work here, but they can't afford to live here. So that's one thing to keep in mind. Also, within this little drawing diagram we made up, the current bylaws for any structure other than a dwelling requires 150 foot of frontage. Again, I'm talking revenue land for the town, right on a roadway. If we're going to have these solar farms set back from the road, let's shrink that frontage down to 40 feet, like we would on a business or residential estate lot, so they got a driveway. Why have 150 foot of frontage that we're giving up revenue on? That's one of the main purposes of this slide. I call it the revenue slide. Also within this slide, we have the requirements of the screening, which are very generic in nature. If you see here, the screening of trees that from the 300 foot, it could be more than 300 foot, but it can't be less. That's what we're recommending. There's a 50-foot buffer. You're going to have a 50-foot buffer anyways on property, some property to setbacks. We said those should be trees. when the solar developer comes in, they're gonna be taking probably trees out of two areas. The red area where the solar panels are, and the white area here, I'll call it, where the clearing is, so there's no more than 20% shading on their solar panels. Because that's one of the requirements by the state, if you want SRECs. And if you don't know what SRECs means, solar renewable energy credits. And a lot of people who have solar on the house gets them. So, as these trees that are in here that they're gonna take down, we're saying, put them in your screening area. That way, Granby remains Granby. Nobody's gonna be seeing all these solar farms. Also, when we get a little farther, our town, as well as other 351 other cities and towns in Massachusetts, the administration has already measured everyone for greenhouse gas emissions. And woe to any community that increases their greenhouse gas emissions. They want you to remain neutral, or they want you to reduce your greenhouse gas emissions. Again, that's from the administration. So as I scroll a little farther, as these trees are removed from here, they can be replanted here or somewhere else. We're just recommending here. Any tree with a waist of 10 inches at the height of 4 feet that is removed for a solar farm will be replaced. That'll help us maintain our greenhouse gas emission status. That is the purpose of that. We're trying to do the best we can with all the conditions we have so we can move forward and meet all the requirements. Now we'll go into the actual articles themselves.
Is this a good time for questions, or are you waiting?
Anytime you want, Steve.
It's really my own. You'd like me to introduce myself?
Yeah, tell you who you are.
Yes. So, hello, my name is Steve Griffin, and I'm the head of school over at the McDuffie School. We are interested in doing a large-scale photovoltaic project, ground-mounted project on our property, and obviously interested in this, and seeing as I am not a town resident and won't be able to speak on Monday, this is my time. I missed the other meetings, regrettably, due to conflicts. So really at this point, I'm just trying to get my head around what this means for us. Mm-hmm. And you lost me at what happens if I don't want to build houses on the front of our property if we're trying to build a large-scale project. So you're saying that I should go into a community partnership with someone. I'm completely lost. So it's just a clarification. Are you asking me to subdivide our land and sell it to someone who puts a house on so you can get tax income so we can be further set back?
Well, I know you've talked to me before about expanding over at McDuffie. One of the things is faculty buildings and stuff like that.
Yeah.
You could put those buildings on the front and put the solar farms behind them.
Right. Those buildings would be far away. We purchased 253 acres, or we have 253 acres over there. This project is far, far away from any sort of school-related buildings that we're talking about. So there would be no use for this. And so the piece for me is the setback, the 100-foot setback in principle is designed to keep the feel of the town. That's the reasoning behind 100 feet. There's a safety issue, I'm assuming, there as well.
As currently written right now, it's a 50-foot setback.
A 50-foot setback.
That's what is currently written now. The
Okay.
planning board's recommending a 100-foot setback
Okay.
to change it, to keep the town. And what we're
To
saying
keep the
is
town.
in
just-
a country atmosphere.
So the country atmosphere is the reasoning for the setback from the road.
That is right. But we're
Okay.
trying to go one step further. In addition to the country atmosphere, as you know, this town needs revenue.
Absolutely.
We want to get you water and sewer all the way up 202, and the only way we can generate revenue is with houses or businesses, in other words, buildings.
Right.
And if we allow the 100-foot setback, that eliminates frontage from a building which we can't make revenue. So we're trying to appease everybody if it's all possible by putting a 300-foot setback, then you can have your solar, so they can build buildings in front of it. And the town can make some revenue from those buildings.
And so just in terms of what that looks like on the ground is that, again, to get my head around this,
Yeah?
you'd be suggesting that if we have no use to build buildings on that front land, our only recourse would be to subdivide and sell that land to somebody who wants to put a building there.
You could do that at your choice. That would be
Okay.
your choice. I'll give you an example. Over here, you got CVS, Florence Bank, and the post office. Those buildings create revenue for the town, but they're on leased land. You don't have to sell it. You could lease it and somebody could put a Cumberland Farms out by your place or do something like that. That is all up to you. It's your land. How you make the most profit out of it is entirely up to you. But for the town to gain any revenue, we have to have a building, because these solar structures give the town absolutely zero revenue.
Right.
And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to be, and I like to call it responsible solar. We want to meet the town's needs, we want to meet the state's needs, we want to try and meet the people's needs. We're trying to meet everybody's needs. That's why we're recommending the 300-foot setback, so the town can get some money up front on the buildings, and the people that have the land behind it can build their solar, get their money, and so on. And that's why I want to point it out that you don't have to be a single property owner to put up solar. You can, as long as you're abutting with somebody else, you don't need to buy them out. You can create what's called community solar. It's more than one property owner. So you
Right.
got 250 acres. Let's say I had 100 acres. We could put them together and build a solar farm. But it would be called community versus an individual.
Right. Sounds like fun. Just sort of back to
Yep.
the question at hand. So, and you said 350 and then you said 300. What's the number you're looking at?
300.
Okay.
300 is the setback. Then you would have 50 feet here that would screen the abutters, so you wouldn't see it.
Right. And that's the thing that conceivably it would have to be an override, or you could seek relief from that in some way.
Any
You could abut
bylaw,
right up to the line if somebody accepted that, right?
any bylaw can receive a variance if they go to the zoning board of appeals.
Right.
That is one thing that I should have mentioned before. Any bylaw, if you appeal it to the zoning board of appeals and they think it's the best interest of the town, they can give you relief by way of a variance.
Okay.
Make sense?
Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
I won't say, I mean,
Well,
the idea of a variance makes sense, but the
Yeah.
idea of taking, somebody who's trying to find a way for a solar project and taking 350 feet by whatever width
Mm-hmm.
away from the project, I mean, it's a substantial number, but I get the interest of the town.
Right.
The
trying to-
taxpayer who's trying to make the money so they can pay the taxes,
Right.
this is what you're trying to balance.
Right.
And, I would say that doesn't feel particularly balanced from my end. I guess that's the best way to put it, having not being able to speak to that on Monday unless invited. I think that's what I'd say at this point. So,
Again, we're trying to keep the prime land of the frontage land
right.
up front.
And
Like,
you need 200 feet of depth to build for a builder's acre. Is that the number you're looking at?
a builder's acre is 40,000 square feet.
Yeah, I know you said that, but you're needing,
On
so,
the frontage, 150 feet.
so it would be 150 wide, and to make it 40,000, right, I can do
Right.
the arithmetic on
And,
that.
and we just rounded
Right.
it off to 300 to
Okay.
get 45 instead of 150 by 262 point whatever.
Right,
We just did that. And again, these are just recommendations. Currently in our bylaws, it's a 50-foot setback.
Oh, I know the recommendations, but if you bring that particular recommendation forward, that's the one that's voted on, unless there's a
Well, the
recommendation to change it.
That's
Right.
it. The planning
So you
board,
rounded up from 262, which would be the number for 150
to meet,
wide,
to meet the 40,000, something like that.
and you rounded it up to 300.
That's right.
And I would strongly suggest that somehow it go back to 262, because you need 40,000, why take 45?
I have no problem with that, and
Yeah.
that can be amended very easily. We just did it for the ease of
Okay.
trying to give out even numbers.
How does that get amended very easily?
Madam Moderator, I wish to amend this item.
At the town.
At the-
So it gets amended, so someone, a Granby resident who might have an interest in McDuffie's future
Any town
standing
resident-
might be able to make that
Any town
a
resident
proposed
can
amendment.
amend it, yes.
Okay,
But we'd like to keep the 40,000 square feet. If they want to bring it down to 300, I could care less what the number is, if we can keep 40,000, because we need to make some revenue.
okay, thank you.
Make sense?
Makes sense.
Okay.
I will admit it makes sense, yeah, thank you.
May not like it, but it makes sense. Go ahead, George, come on up.
You can hear me from
But
here.
you're not on recording.
Okay, long as Alex says it's okay. I know.
George, you're good. The microphone can hear you.
I'm sorry, I gotta get better. If he's confused, I'm more confused.
Okay.
And if he would like to speak at town meeting, he can. He can request permission to speak from the town moderator.
Yes.
And as a former moderator, I never declined anybody the right to speak at town meeting.
You're 100%
But-
right.
But if I understand what you're saying, in order for McDuffie to want to put a solar farm out there, they first have to build a building and put this,
No,
So-
they don't have to build a building at all.
so they can, theoretically, they could put this solar farm out there
As long as it's 300 feet back from the street.
from 202 and from School Street.
That's correct. They can go ahead and do it. And if McDuffie chooses to put buildings there on their own, that's their choice.
Okay, so-
If McDuffie chooses to sell off lots to contractors to build buildings, that's their choice.
Yeah. Did that confuse you? Because it confused the heck out of me. So come to town meeting Monday night and ask to speak.
Even sitting back in the
Absolutely.
pariah section,
Yep, yep.
You, as long as the moderator approves it, you can actually. Yeah, they're from Holyoke.
all right.
But anyways, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to make all parties happy if that's possible. And we all know it's very difficult to make everybody happy. But the town needs revenue. We call it responsible solar, responsible renewable energy. And the frontage of the property is the most valuable than the land that's set back from the front. And with that, we'll move on down to the individual articles. And again, under our current bylaws, any structure other than a dwelling requires 150 foot of frontage. We're recommending for the solar, we cut it down to 40 feet. Again, we're trying to save as much frontage as we possible for revenue creating funds for the town. Why have 150 foot of frontage for a solar farm that sits back? To us, it doesn't make sense. That's why we're saying shrink it down to 40. Okay, then we go to the first one here, is 3.99.3A. Large-scale ground-mounted solar photovoltaic installation shall be permitted on parcels 40,000 square feet or larger, 250 kW and larger, but not larger than 15 acres, located within residential, single-family RS, industrial I, and I2 districts. What that is saying is what I said. The state's definition of a large-scale solar farm is 40,000 square feet or larger, or 250 kW or larger. So we're just putting in the state's definition of what a large-scale solar is, so everybody knows what it is. And again, If you go to the zoning board of appeals and you wanna appeal it and they approve it, they're the ones in the town that can change a bylaw, as long as it's in the best interest of the town. We have large-scale ground-mounted solar voltaic installations shall not be allowed on important agricultural farmlands as defined by the U.S. Department of Agriculture as those soils found to be important pursuant to 7 CFR and 657.5, that includes prime farmlands, unique farmlands, and additional land of state importance. This is something the state and the federal government is putting in. They do not want to lose food-bearing land at all. They don't want to. The Department of Agriculture, if you go out to the USDA site, you can go to the map, put your address in, and you can see what type of soil you have. They don't want to do it. But here's what the state is willing to do. The new regulations by the state should be published in November. As you can see by these pictures, I think there's one on the bottom that's even better. Bottom line is, these pictures are showing a dual use of property, of farmland and solar. People who don't know it, farmland is only taxed at 25% of the rate of a normal resident. As a normal resident, we're taxed at $19.36 per thousand. You take 25% of that, which is under $5. The farmland classified under Chapter 61 is taxed at $5 and less than $5 per thousand. That's what they're taxed at. Because the state wants farmland to be kept going. They want food to feed people. They want chickens. They want everything to feed people. That's why they give the farmers a 75% rate reduction on their property taxes. Right there. Now, here's a dual use. Dickinson Farm just opened. When Dickinson's farm put in for their solar farm, they had to give up their property rate reduction, and they were reverted back to the $19.36. Under this dual use program the state is putting on, you can keep your 25% or your 75% reduction, as long as you do solar and agriculture. Because the state wants both. The state really wants both. They want solar for renewable energy, and they want to keep the farmland going to feed the people. So Dickinson's lost because they jumped the gun. That was their choice. There's other farmland that's been given up. When a developer for solar comes into an area, Massachusetts Department of Energy steers them to dumps, gravel pits, brown spots. Brown spot is basically a contaminated area. In other words, land that is undevelopable for any reasons, they steer the solar farms there. But the solar developer doesn't want to go there because it costs more money to build there. This solar developer would prefer a flat land with no trees. So if you look at the SRECs, the solar renewable energy credits, they get less money for using a solar. The state is trying to promote their solar and farming together with this dual use program. And it's currently being used, and what town is this one? It's out here,
Is that UMass?
UMass. But I think it's located in Whately or something like that.
I think so.
I think it's in Whately. South Deerfield. South Deerfield is where it is. But the state wants its cake and eat it too. They want the food for the people, and they want the renewable energy to get rid of fossil fuel. In this way, the farmers do not lose their 75% reduction, and they grow food. That's what the state is pushing for. And the new regulations, you see it come out in November, it's gonna be stiffer and stiffer. They don't want trees cut down. As a community, we cannot afford to have our gas rate go up. So that's why we put in there, if you take a tree with a 10-inch waist at 4 feet, replant it. And what we've done in addition to that, if we come back to here, see, this is where the yellow is removed. That's what the planning board's proposing, from 50 to 100. Here's our 300 foot from the road, our 40 feet in front of minimal. That's for the one that's, we said to go in the back instead of 150, and a minimum of 50 feet on each side. Also in there, based upon storm water concerns, climate change, the runoff. If you don't know it, any rain that hits an impervious surface, and all asphalt is considered impervious surface, is considered polluted water because of the oil and stuff in the asphalt. Right now, we're going through a major change on Route 202, which will be starting next spring. It's gonna create 11 feet wider with a sidewalk on either side and a 3-foot bike lane. And the water, I've been showed a picture of the new curbs. The water is gonna go under the curbs and spread out, so you don't have the rolling rivers going down the curbs. But that's polluted water, and what do we live on? Wells. We already have enough wells that are polluted. This could pollute some more. So that's why they're saying no more than an 8% slope to put the solar on. Because when you have all these solar panels up, you don't have the vegetation. Vegetation will slow the water going down. And the recommendation is no more than an 8% slope. Now, the reason, one of the main reasons we're recommending the 50-foot of the screening, this is what you got today in Granby. That's a solar farm in Granby on East Street. I was sitting in my truck when I took that picture. So you know I wasn't that close to it, but you can see it. It's not for season screening. And it particularly, and I think it was 2 Mondays ago I took it, so it's not all fall foliage. It was, still had some green out there. There's that one. Then there's this one. The people of Granby don't want to be riding around and this is all they see. That is the purpose of the screening. That is the sole purpose of the screening. So Granby can keep its country atmosphere without having to look at things like that. Under our current solar bylaws, that's what you're gonna get. And that's why we're trying to put some improvements into the solar bylaws. And this is what I talked about. The screening shall be a minimum of 50 feet wide to the height of the solar installation of screening on all sides, including public ways, roads/streets. Setback may be used for screening. When they built the Dickinson Farms, or are building the Dickinson Farms, one, during the public hearing, some of the residents came in and they basically said, we don't want to see we don't mind the solar, we just don't want to see it. So the solar developer is going to have to plant trees so the people won't be able to see the solar. But because Dickinson Farm has no trees currently, it's a farm, all that money is overhead coming out of the developer. Versus the other way we're saying, to save our greenhouse gas emissions, if you take one down, you put one up. That's all that says. And it says, we even gone so far as saying, the planting shall use a minimum of a 4-foot height of a 4-season foliage tree. So we won't see like we saw in the pictures. And/or a minimum of a 5-foot deer-resistant arborvitae. We don't want to see that people plant trees, and I know the deer have to eat, but they can eat something else than the screening material, so we don't have to look at the solar farm. That's why we put that in there. Again, we're trying to think of everything to do at once. But you can plant any kind of vegetation you want with trees, as long as it's 4 seasons. And trees shall be planted in a staggered or a triangle foundation. Basically, if you plant a tree here, you go over 10 feet here. When you do your next row, you put your tree here and tree there, so they're in a triangle, so when they expand, they make the screening up. That's all we're saying. Because right now, it is not defined. Anything that is not defined and put into a special permit as a condition, that's what it is. It's an opinion. It's not a bylaw. Bylaw is your people's voice, your law. A bylaw, a condition is an opinion. And opinions have to be justified if it goes to court. And again, we spend too much money in court right now that we could use the money elsewhere better. So we're trying to help everybody at the same time as streamlining and keep us out of court and let us spend our money on the productive stuff, whether it's getting rid of dead trees over utility lines, fixing parking lots, putting in water, putting in sewer, stuff like that. That's what we're trying to do, maximize our revenue. I don't want to lose that.
So Jay, what you're saying
Yes,
is that the farmer that puts a solar farm on his farm, the town doesn't make a dime,
that's correct.
and the farmers in business is staying in business, I'm gonna assume, so what business is it of the town? Maybe I didn't word that question right, but if the farmer wants to put it on his property, just like if you wanna put it on your property, and why is it a business of the town to make money on what you do on your property?
As you saw by the slide, the Department of Agriculture is defining that if it's a food-growing land, they don't want solar on it. So it's not us. It's the state and federal government.
Well, that's fine, but there's other people that have property, I'm gonna assume, that don't grow food, and maybe wanna put some solar on the back of their property that's gonna be larger than whatever the minimum is.
Again, George, on each individual, I'd have to evaluate it individually. I'm not against people making money, don't get me wrong.
Well, it's not the impression I get from listening to what you're saying here, and I'm probably not alone.
Well,
Personally, Jay, I don't care.
Okay.
You know, it's no skin off of my nose, because I'm not gonna have a solar farm.
I understand, but with the solar farm, the town does not benefit from revenue. What could happen if somebody wanted to put a solar farm up? If it's on 61A land, the town can buy the land right out from under the person, for the first right of refusal.
And that's fine too, but even.
I'm just stating a fact.
Even if it's not 61A, whoever land it is already paying taxes on the land, am I correct?
I would assume everybody pay taxes, whether it's 25% or 100%, yes.
Okay.
But that is on property. That's not on a building or something like that. And we're trying to get more buildings in. We're not against solar. We just want to call it responsible solar.
I don't get that impression from listening to all this.
Well, I'll give you an example. We're sitting right here right now. The town has 19.6 acres back there. Okay? We could use that, but we have no access to it right now. There's a lot of places in town that don't have that. I don't wanna pick on anybody individual, that I know some people here that have some land that's back there, that without the business estate lots, they'd have be landlocked, and they couldn't make money on it, and that's why we're trying to open this stuff up, so they can make money on it. If they can make money on it, the town gains revenue. Maybe I'm not wording it right, but I'm trying to word it in such a way, we keep Granby as it is looking, the individuals can make money on their land, and the town can make revenue as well. I'm trying to satisfy all three, is what the attempt is to do. Go ahead, Steve. You can sit there. Anybody see? As long as Alex can pick you up.
Yeah. You know me, back to frontage.
Yeah.
And, just thinking about in terms of zoning, because you talked about putting a house and having a builder's acre.
Yeah.
If your property is zoned something other than residential, you could have a larger frontage. And
The frontage is a minimum of 150 feet.
Yeah,
Okay.
yes. You could have a larger frontage that makes up the square footage that you're talking about for a building. I'm just trying to think about minimizing setback.
Lil, I know it's 150-foot frontage for a resident. Is there a minimum depth for a resident?
I don't.
Yeah, we're not talking about residential though.
Well, you could be talking industrial, and solar is not allowed in the business district today. In November it will be.
Yeah.
I mean,
But
they've have resiliencies
what I'm
coming.
saying, is there a minimum depth for a lot you're trying to make tax revenue on?
That would be the
You know,
builder's lot.
Because we could have but I'm saying we have a larger width.
Well,
That would minimize the depth and allow you to get your tax revenue.
from what you're saying, as long as you meet the minimum requirements for septic and water well water separation. You
I
got
don't want-
40,000.
I don't want a lot there at all, so if, you know, don't say what I want is for the solar to basically abut the road and we'll put up a nice screen there and everything's good, but, you know, rather than going 300 feet back, I'm trying to think about what, again, the town would accept. Again, I'm still trying to get my head around, when I look at a solar project, I think, isn't that nice, a solar project, I don't think blight on our land, but that's just me. But trying to minimize that amount of depth that's required, again, in order to create you want your businesses to make income.
Right. Okay, Brian, you had your hand up?
Just as an example, my lot at my house,
Yeah.
it's registered 200 by 200. It meets the minimum 40,000 square feet.
But you could have a lot with 150-foot frontage, and you could have, well, say, a frontage, like you said, 200 by 200. So he's not back 300, he's 200 by 200.
Yes, we're saying the same thing. I'm saying if I had a 200 by 200 foot lot at the front, I would still have a lot that would be acceptable, something I could sever, and yet I'm not 300 feet back, as you suggested, starting my solar project. Now I'm only 200 feet back. So I'm trying to think about ways that
Okay.
minimize that
What I
setback
would-
from the road.
Myself thinking, as long as you met the minimum 40,000 square feet and go in any direction you want, and it met the other requirements of the well and the septic, I would see no problem. If I went to the zoning board of appeals, I would agree with it.
Well, fundamentally, there's no requirement to meet it. That's what I'm saying. If we leave that land fallow, we're just meeting your requirement of setback. So if I say it's 1,000 feet wide now, we leave a 1,000-foot wide swath because there's no services out there anyway. So we're not selling it to somebody to develop anyway, right? So now you've got 1,000 feet by 40 feet deep in order to
Meet the
create a
board.
lot that you're looking for. Then we build our solar project in behind. I mean, it seems,
Again, I don't know how.
The idea to create a setback because you want me to subdivide those lots and sell them, so somebody develop them in a place where no development is currently occurring. That's what I think
George.
George was saying when he said it seems like it's not set up to try to set people who are entrepreneurial to make some money.
As far as I'm concerned, if we can meet the requirements to put a building there, whatever those requirements are, that's as far back as we have to go. We were doing, again, we're not perfect when we did this out. We just used 150 up front. And Brian gave us an example. He's 200 by 200. So in that particular case, the solar farm could start at 200 feet. Now, could it come even closer to the road? Depending on how far you have to set back the well from the house and the septic from the house, you could even come closer. I have personally no problems with that at all.
So then a potential amendment language for Monday to this could talk about that the subdivided or the property at the front must meet a spec that it could be
A buildable lot.
a buildable lot.
Yeah, something like that, and that would bring the 300 feet back in.
But even if it's not zoned residential, it's got to be buildable for something.
Well, you see, unfortunately, if we go to the chart here, the large-scale solar farms are only allowed in residential singular or industrial. They are not allowed in residential multi or general business. That's already in our bylaws. So that's why I was talking mainly residential singular house, because our bylaws allow large-scale ground mounted there. But as long as we meet the 40,000 square foot requirement and whatever other requirements is to build a building, I think it's great. It's a win-win for both sides. You move closer and there's a spot for revenue for the town. I really don't see a problem with that personally. But the thing of it is, when you put it into a bylaw like this, you can't meet every condition. That's why we have the zoning board of appeals that can turn around and say, okay, you meet the requirements for a house, you're 200 by 200, so you don't need a 300-foot setback. It could come out that year 300 by 150. I don't know what the number would be, because I haven't dealt with the setback requirements for the wells and leach fields. So I can't give you an answer to that. But that's something that I'll put down for Monday and on my notes.
Or it could just say it's reserved awaiting town water and sewer.
That's correct. That's, yeah. And that's what we're hoping for. Both you and I are hoping for that. Okay, I'm just gonna put down 40,000 square feet in a question mark and see how we can fit it in, like Brian's 200 by 200. See what we can get. But again, as long as we meet the wells and the leach fields setbacks from each other in the required building, I don't see a problem. Because again, to me, that's still a win-win. Brian, do you want something?
No, just think, isn't it 100 feet between the two?
I don't know.
Board of Health was here to answer.
It is.
It's 100.
Okay, it's 100 feet from well to, so let's say your building is, your house is, round numbers, 50 feet. I know mine's only 25 by 50. I mean, I don't have the biggest house in the world. So probably more realistic, let's call it 30 feet. So if I had a 30-foot by a ranch, 50-foot house, hypothetically, or a 30 by 7, I don't know, I'm just picking numbers out of the air. As long as my well and my leach field were 100 feet apart and the house could be in the middle, the only requirements I'd have to look back is the setback from the well and the leach field from the road or from the neighbor's property. I have no problem with that at all.
Sounding more and more like the 100-foot original proposal makes a lot of sense.
If they had clarification in here, I would agree. But again, without clarification, and that's the whole purpose of the bylaws, is to get rid of the ambiguities that become opinions that are always challenged in court. So if we can come up with some way to meet it, maybe we should just say something like, you can have a 40,000 square foot building lot and not define what depth it'd be or something like that. A buildable lot of 40,000 square feet, just define it as that. Does that sound better to everybody?
No. You have to have some frontage, you have to have some depth, you have to have something.
Right. But again, I don't know what to pick.
With a lot of property, you could stretch that thing 20 feet wide,
Well,
without
yeah,
it being long.
yeah, I mean, I don't want to be cynical, but it could be done.
But again, that's,
If you said a buildable lot, a 45,000 square foot area with a minimum depth of, well, and I'd say 100, but yes.
but then we have to have 100 between the well and the septic, and they can't be too close to some butters.
Well, but if the well's sitting on the solar property with an easement, that's possible too.
Again, there's so many possibilities. That's why I have the zoning board of appeals to make those. We can't make every condition in writing, so we gotta start somewhere with a baseline.
Because one of the few things solar can sit on is a well zone.
You are, and this is public well.
Yeah.
A public well, you may have a problem with that one.
No, it is, it's allowable on a public well.
400 feet
Yeah,
versus.
inside zone 1.
Right, inside zone 1, 400 feet. If any other structure from a public well, I believe is 1,000 feet. But a solar farm is allowed within 400 feet, correct?
Yeah.
See, I'm writing my numbers on some of this. But, go ahead, George.
So, I'm thoroughly confusing myself here, and I don't want to do that. If McDuffie wants to build their solar farm, and don't misunderstand me, right? I don't care. And what you're saying is that in order for the town to make money on their solar farm,
When you will make no money on the solar farm.
Okay.
You can drop
But-
that there.
in order for the town to make money on anybody's solar farm,
Nobody will ever make money on a solar farm. Only person that'll make money on a solar farm is the landowner and the solar company. The town will never make money on any solar farm.
The only advantage.
okay,
we
let me
have-
finish on that.
Okay.
Is that when they're, what you're saying, if I understand you correctly, is that they need to set up building lots that run down 202 and set up building lots that run up School Street. Am I correct in my thinking?
Well, that was the thought process we had because the prime land is always against the street.
Right. My concern was, and for anybody that wants to do something like this, is that you're not forcing them to sell a building lot so the town makes money.
I don't want to force anybody to do anything. I'm trying to meet those three criteria.
Yeah.
Keep Granby as it is, let the individual make money and let the town make money.
Yeah, and that's fine, if that was my property, and I wanted to put in a solar farm, and so long as you're not forcing me to set up building lots that I'm required to sell so that the town can make some money.
No.
It sounds like we could, sorry, you go.
Well, George, they're not putting their solar farm anywhere near School Street.
No, I understand
Okay, let
that.
me finish. So they have nothing, they don't have to do anything with School Street. They're building lots, nothing. It's only on the other side where, in front of where the solar project would go, that's where they have to be concerned
Yeah.
about having enough room to put in some building. They don't have to sell it, they don't even have to put in a building, they don't have to do anything. They
My-
just have
my
to have the
question-
land.
You just answered the question that I was gonna ask. Thank
So
you.
we don't need to subdivide, it's
Okay.
just
Yep.
it's a setback,
Okay.
so that if in the future we wish to, so it's unusable land right now. I guess
Well,
is what we're-
I don't want to say it's unusable, it's not scheduled to be used. There's no plans to use it right now, but it is usable land in the future. You could use it for anything. Go ahead,
I
Brian.
do like the way you're talking about, Jay. What they are picking up are building lots, and they're taxed differently. Taxed differently than one lump sum piece of property. So yes, the town will see a better revenue with building lots in front of a solar field. So that's where the town's revenue is gonna be. It's not gonna be
No, it's
a solar
only,
field.
it's only if they survey them to make them a building lot, that's when the town would make money.
No, on land out there, the town makes $19.36 per thousand on the assessed value of the land. Unless it's under chapter 61, then they make less than $5 per thousand on that part.
What I'm saying, if they went out, if McDuffie went out on 202 with a surveyor and surveyed out a building lot, recorded the deed, they would have to pay property taxes on that one parcel as a building lot.
It would be no difference if they added all their land together. It would come out the same.
No, it wouldn't.
Well, put it this way, it would depend on the assessed value of the lot itself. I have to put it to you that way and put it to the Board of Assessors. And they would, whatever they assess the lot as, it would be $19.36 per thousand they assessed it at.
It sounds like the best plan is to set it back and then to start farming it.
Yes, because the state is really promoting
Right.
farming
Sure.
and solar together, which in McDuffie's case,
It'd be a good course.
okay, I'll give you an example, Steve. Say you wanted to do both. You could lease out portion of your land, this strip, to a solar developer, a portion, this strip, to a farmer, or you can own it yourself. Then your property rate would drop from $19.36 per thousand down to under chapter 61A. Then you'd be taxed at less than $5 per thousand, and you would get the SRECs from the solar as well. See, that's what the state is promoting. They want dual use. And that's why they're making that so lucrative. So if people have land out there, it doesn't mean they themselves have to farm it. They can give somebody else to farm it. And then the same thing on the farmer's side. If the farmer wants to farm it, does he have to lease the land out for a solar developer? No, he could install the solar himself and reap all the profits. Because he is going to remain under chapter 61A. That's the cheap property rate, 61A. She's giving me a face like, what's 61A? So, do we want to move on? Are we all set with that? Again, we're trying to satisfy, and this is a good conversation, the three things is keep Granby as Granby in our country atmosphere. Let the individuals that own property make revenue for themselves. And at the same time, let the town make revenue because we need to support our departments to support the individuals in town. I'm trying to work something to make everybody happy, and I know I'm never going to get there to make everybody happy, but that's what I'm trying. It's just like when I got elected. I got elected by the majority of the people. Was that 51% or was that 99%? Because we know it wasn't unanimous. So when I make a decision, I make it for the majority of the people. Whatever helps them the most, the majority of the people. Okay? We also have in here something that was a lot of concern for a lot of people on the different solars that have been proposed, as far as mitigating the loss of a forest habitat within the installation itself and mitigation of disruption of existing trail networks for our wildlife. Shutesbury has some of the best bylaws I've seen as far as habitat. Basically, if you're going to build a solar farm in Shutesbury and you're going to put a farm where the animals drink water or the animals have a trail coming through, they're requiring the solar developer to make the brook larger outside the fence so they can get some water and put a trail around the fence so the animals are less disturbed. That's all what that means. Let the animals have their habitat. Don't fence them out so they have no water, they have no food, and they have nowhere to go. That's why we put that in there, because we thought that was good. We have a lot of wildlife in Granby. In fact, just a real quick one, when I turned the key in last night, because I had a finance committee meeting last night, to the dispatch where the key was, a woman was on the phone, the black bear was on her porch. That's how much the wildlife was. And then she asked the dispatcher, should I go outside and remove my bird seed from the porch? And he says, no, not right now. I wouldn't suggest it. But I'm saying we have a lot of wildlife in Granby. And that's a true story from last night. Okay, we'll move on from here. We go into Article 3. Article 3 is basically inspections of the large-scale ground-mounted solar system. If you look what our planning board has in our current bylaws, we have the word they require inspections, but they don't say inspect what, inspect how, or whatever. So we use, and just to let you know, the green stuff you see here is bylaws from other municipalities that we copy and pasted that the Attorney General's office has already approved. It's nothing that we made up. It's already out there. So when our bylaws go to the Attorney General, there's already a precedent for them because they've already approved them in another community. So what we did is we looked around the other bylaws and they had some real good reports. Like the operation and maintenance plan. The requirements of this bylaw and approves granted hereunder, including but not limited, contain the management and maintenance of vegetation compliance. I gotta move down here.
We're on the edge of our seats.
Ta-da. With the approved plans, any permit conditions, continuation of liability insurance. One of our solar farms in town forgot to renew their insurance, so we would have been in trouble if something happened to it. Again, this is all documentation and an annual report that'll be supplied to the select board, the planning board, the fire chief, the building commissioner, the board of health, and the conservation commission no later than 45 days at the end of the calendar year. We're putting out specific type of reports. Again, if you get into conditions, you get into justification. Why? You could end up in court. If it's in a bylaw that you got to provide these reports, you got to provide them. Can you get relief? Zoning Board of Appeals, right there. It's better, the attorneys say it's better to have a little stricter and then give leniency than go to court and battle for what you want. Because only two people are going to win. The lawyer for the plaintiff and the lawyer for the defendant. Nobody else is going to really win. And that pretty much takes care of Article 3. And these articles are going to take us the longest to get through on Monday. Article 4, renumbering, this is the site plan section. All this does on Article 4 is there's some typos in our current bylaws, and Article 4 fixes those typos. So it's nothing really major. But again, if you modify an existing bylaw, you have to do it by the people, by a 2/3 majority. You just can't change the typos. You have to get their approval. And that's what Article 4 is. And that would be the end of our solar portion. And again, this is all stuff in black, so this is all stuff that's not modified, not changed, not nothing. So that's why we just left that in black. Now, that'll finish the 4 articles on solar. Is everybody comfortable, ready to move on? We got up to 11 articles to do. Some of them are going to get a lot easier. Okay, I'm going to knock that one off, and I'm gonna bring up the water pipeline. And I'm showing this slide mainly for our GCAM audience who may not have been involved with the other discussion of the 3 phases of the water pipeline. You want it larger than that, Alex? Is that good?
I'll be fine.
Okay. Anyways, it shows here phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3. We've already done this, and I'm telling you right now, under this article, which is Article 5, I am not asking for any more money. I'm just updating you on the conditions. I'm not asking for any money. Okay, so we'll close that current one down. This is where I showed you where the criteria come from the green community. And this is the warrants itself. We are now on number 5, which is right here. Authorize the select board to continue the water line construction. And basically, we put that in there because there are some changes and we want to be transparent and tell everybody what it is. We put in for a grant under the Municipal Vulnerability Preparedness Program. The total project cost for phase 1 documentation, phase 1 construction, phase 2 documentation, and phase 3 documentation was a total of $2,643,872. Out of that, our grant, which we cannot exceed $2 million, we put in for $1,943,328.40. After talking to the Lieutenant Governor, who's a real nice person, she gave us $560,000 in in-kind funds. For people who don't know what in-kind funds, it's like a duplicate effort. Example. When they come through to redo 202, there are going to be police details out there. They would have already surveyed all the land. They would have already taken the soil samples from the land. They would be putting down new asphalt. You add all that stuff up, and the duplicate effort to do a water pipeline in that would have been $560,000. So she says, I'll take that off your bill. When I say it that way is, with an MVP grant, you're authorized a maximum of 75% of the project. That's why when you see 2.6 million, okay, 75% of that is roughly 1.9 million or in change. The 1.9 million of the grant, approximately 1/4 of that, of the whole project is 700,000. That's where the 700,000 comes from. And you subtract what they're gonna subtract from that 700,000. So our bill was 700,000 right now. But Lieutenant Governor says, take 560,000 off your bill because we're gonna give you in-kind funds. To do that entire project in the year 2020 and 2021 would have cost us approximately $140,543.60. That's all it would have cost us. But here's the problem. Mass DOT pushed 5 corners in School Street off through the year 2023. And under the MVP program, you have to expend your funds in 1 year. So you have to do all your work in a year. So we had to withdraw our application. After talking to the Lieutenant Governor, we sat down with the Energy and Environmental Secretary and the lady in charge of MVP. We're gonna get a reprieve. The reprieve is, we have no control of the schedule if we're working with Mass DOT. If we go over the year limit on future grants, as long as it's on 202, we are not gonna be held to the 1-year requirement. Our only restriction will be, we cannot apply for another MVP grant until that MVP grant that we applied for is complete. And again, these grants are not only competitive, they're reimbursable. That's why the town people had authorized us stuff to borrow 1.2 million. Because we had to show that we have the money in hand. The town is authorizing to have us, or they won't let us put it in. The easiest way, and I would just do this real quick to show you, and I wrote all this if you want to know. Makes a difference. That's why I know what's in it. The grant will request the funds from the following tasks marked in the beginning, which would be phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3. And the Granby's long-term goal is to secure climate-resilient drinking water that supplies as many residents as possible, securing a loop connection between the 8-inch main on State Route 202 and the existing 16-inch MWRA, was Massachusetts Water Resource Authority, line that passes through the town on East Street and is critical to ensuring the future water main expansions will have sufficient volume to maintain. What all that means, South Hadley is going to supply us with up to 100,000 gallons of water per day, which will suffice on phase 1 and phase 2. But once we want to expand past phase 2, we have to get water from the Massachusetts Water Resource Authority, which is MWRA. Right now, the easiest way to get it is 2 ways. Either have South Hadley's allotment increased, or we do our own that comes down South Hadley's pipe with East Street, and we run our own pipe from there. But we are looking into other options, which are less expensive to move the water around town. But again, until they're in stone, there are just, thoughts out there on what to do. So, but basically, that is the summary of what we did on our first MVP grant. And we have a breakdown here. And like I say, I'm not going to be allowed to do this at all at the special town meeting. So I'm going to do it this way so the audience can see it. These are all the individual costs. Call your line items, what everything costs. The grant, the match, and the total. And the proposed completion dates. That's what we have to put in on the grant. And this is the one we had to withdraw because they moved it out to 2023, and we have here finishing it in April of 2020. What we are going to do now is it's MVP time again. By 2 p.m. on the 20th of November, we can reapply for the MVP grant, and that's what we're planning on doing. Now, a lot of people don't understand the acquisition process. How do we do this? So I wrote this one up. You come up with the conception of your project or your project conception. In this case, this is the water line project. That's our conception. Now you must recreate your requirements definitions. When I worked at the Defense Contract Management Agency, all we did was contracts. The most important thing you had to do was get all your requirements done up front. Because if your requirements are not firm, you're on thin ice. I have literally seen contractors lowball contracts that were poorly written, because once they get the contract, they're going to change order you to death to meet your goal. And you're going to have cost overruns up the yang-yang, really. So requirements definition, to me, is the most important stage of the acquisition process. After you get your requirements sent, you go into preliminary design, which is your high-level drawings. Detailed design, which we are currently in now because we got some changes requested from South Hadley. Those will be finished within a week. Then we have what's called an RFP package, a request for proposal. That goes out. Contractors bid on it. They can do it different ways. A request for proposal is different from a request for a quote. Request for a quote is low bid wins. Request for proposal may not be the low bid, but it'll be the best quality you can get for the lowest price. So RFP is always the best way to go if you want to. It's a lot more work, but it's the best way to go. Once the RFP package is created, establishes our estimated costs. Once our estimated costs are established, again, we can create a grant application if there's one out there. And after the RFP comes back, you get your actual cost. Example, the school, East Meadow. The estimated cost was $30 million. When the job of construction was finished, it came in at $27 million. Sometimes they're higher, sometimes they're lower. But if you're working with me, the estimated cost is always going to be higher. Because I'd rather say, here's some money back, because I don't want to come crawling back to you for more money. I don't like that. I'd rather estimate a little higher. Example, last year, South Hadley did a water project on Route 116. It cost them $213 a foot. All the cost estimations we're doing out here are on $250 a foot. I'd rather do it that way. And that's where the 1.2 million came from. That's the acquisition process that has to be followed, and a lot of people get confused because they don't understand it, so that's why I put that in there. Now that's where we are tonight. I don't need to put that one up. We all know where we're sitting. That's probably one I can remove. I said we're back in detailed design phase for the next application. These are the two new requirements that South Hadley has given us. Originally, we were doing what's called, not direct, but drilling. You know what I mean, Brian? What's the word I'm looking for? Directional drilling. Directional drilling. Like they did on Morgan Street when they went under the brook there. Well, we have a brook with a bridge up there. You go directional drilling down under it, and that's the way to go. Well, South Hadley says, no, we don't want directional drilling. We want insulated water pipes above ground. You have to understand this. When we finish this water project, using South Hadley's water of 100,000 gallons per day, we will pay for the plumbing, but they will own it because they are going to maintain it. We are not going to maintain it. We don't have the staff. They're going to do the billing to the people. They're going to do everything like that. We pay for the pipe, so we have to work with their requirements. Just like we have to work with Mass DOT's schedule. And it's hard to work when you're running on somebody else's schedule and somebody else's requirements because you're going to meet all them if you want to get to your outcome. Also, all property owners are required to connect to the new freshwater pipeline. And their existing wells must be decommissioned. The reason for the decommissioning of the existing wells, the way they put it in South Hadley, it's too easy to go to Home Depot, my Boston accent's kicking in, and get a piece of pipe and connect the two pipelines together. Now you can get cross-contamination between their water and your well water, which is not allowed. So that's why the well has to be decommissioned. Right now, they have sunk the pilings in. The pipes will not be hanging off the bridge. They will be on its own pilings next to the bridge. And the reason they had to sink the pilings, we didn't know if there was muck down there or there was ledge down there. To get an accurate cost in the detailed design phase, to do the documents, we had to do that work. And from what I was told, that work was done Monday. So we should be getting an RFP package very shortly with our estimated cost. Then we'll come out of detailed design and go back into RFP stage.
Jay,
Yes.
where the property owners are going to be required to connect into this, any cost estimates what it could potentially be to the
South Hadley has told us they're going to charge the property owner $2,000 to connect. And there's been various cost estimates on decommissioning wells. When you decommissioned yours, you said you just
They crush it.
crushed it. Okay? Some people actually put some kind of chemicals in it to decommission it. It depends on the individuals, what they're doing. But South Hadley's hookup into the pipeline, South Hadley's gonna charge $2,000. That's what they're telling us. That's what they charge their people when they build a new house in South Hadley to connect to their existing pipeline. They charge them $2,000 plus. Here's the plus. When you connect a water or a sewer line to an existing pipe, you gotta pay for the tearing up of the road, the laying of the pipe, and the replacement of the road for inspections. The reason the people on this pipeline are only gonna be charged $2,000 now is because of the 5-year rule. The town's gonna have to pick the tab up of putting the pipe in and the ends out, the stubs out. Because if we don't put the stubs out now for the property owners to connect to, then the property owner is gonna pay the $2,000. Plus he's gonna have to pay the Mass DOT contractor to tear up his 5-year guarantee. Then he's gonna have to pay the Mass DOT inspector to come back in to see if it meets Mass DOT requirements. So that's why on the section we're doing up to 54 West State Street, which is the part that will be done next spring in the year 2020, we've included the stub price into our estimate price, because it's unrealistic for a property owner to go against the state in the contractor. Be unrealistic. What's gonna happen from 55 State Street onward, you can connect to the pipeline, because we're not planning to stop at 54 West State Street. We're planning on going all the way to Amherst Street. So the people at 54 West State Street to the South Hadley line, they're getting a break. Now, if there's some way that Mr. Martin and those people can figure out how to figure a cost for them for the asphalt stuff, that's up to them. I'm not getting involved in that. But from 55 West State Street forward, the people that connect to the water are gonna have to pay for the cutting of the pavement, attaching to the stub, replacement of the pavement. Because that will be inspected by Mass DOT, but not the contractor. Because there's no 5-year rule from 55 West State Street out. Does that make sense? Everybody understand that?
Yeah, it sounds expensive.
They said to put a sewer line on AJ's, I was told it cost them $1,500 to cut out the asphalt, connect to the sewer connection to the building. That's what I was told from AJ's.
Sewer connection or water connection?
A sewer connection, because there's no water over there yet. They wanted to add another bathroom, so they add another sewer. So it was a $1,500 fee for it. That's what I was told from them. Dan Darcy and Al over there. Okay, the next thing that we're on, the South Hadley requirements. This is the new MVP grant documentation that I'm working on, and I forgot to do this right here, so I will do it now. I caught myself. I didn't see it go in there. Should be a strikeout in there.
You don't have it highlighted?
Highlight it.
Oh, okay. I thought I had it highlighted. Maybe I should take the color off first and put the line in first.
There you go. Now you gotta re-highlight it.
Yeah, I can see it better this way.
Ah, okay. There you go.
I'm a person that does not reinvent the wheel. So if I have something already written, I'm going to modify it to the next task. See, this is a good run-through for me for a special town meeting. If you go through this document here as is, I have to update some of this yellow stuff with the new prices, just like I told you about already. As you scroll through the entire document itself, you're gonna see areas in red. That's being deleted out because we're only doing phase one. As I showed you on the last application, we did phase one documentation and construction. We did phase two documentation and phase three documentation. We have a new need in Granby. It's called dead trees over utility lines. With that being said, we're allowed $2 million for the MVP grant. We're gonna put 1.9 million towards the water line and 100,000 towards the dead trees to get reimbursed from doing it. Again, we're trying to save you as much money as we can. And
There you go.
yeah, I'm done with number 5. That finishes the water line unless anybody got any questions on it. Again, it's just updated information. I don't want no more money. But I just want to tell you what the new conditions are so everybody completely understands. There's nothing being hidden here at all. Number 6, the town will vote to authorize borrow transfer of $6,300 or greater, lesser amount for the purpose of funding the pavement repairs of the new library. I wasn't involved in this project, but I understand they had to do a lot of blasting with dynamite for all the ledge that building was built on. Is that correct, George?
Yes, it is.
That is what's causing the pavement to start cracking now. So they have to start, $6,300 is the price to repair the pavement. That's it in a nutshell. We should shoot through that article pretty quick. Number 7, to see if the town will vote to authorize and appropriate, borrow or transfer from available funds the sum of $100,000 or greater of a lesser amount for the purpose of funding tree removal along public ways or take any actions thereto. I'm gonna try and get you your $100,000 back with the MVP funds. That's why I said we're cutting off the other 2 and we're putting MVP. To show you what's going on, and Dave DeRoche is gonna do this article, not me, but we work pretty close together. This is the trees. These are the trees that are dead. National Grid will not trim dead trees because they only have to do 5 to 10 feet of the trees within the utility wires. The only time National Grid really takes a tree down if it's endangering a transformer, because that's big bucks.
You meant remove a tree.
Yeah, get rid of, they don't even remove it. They just cut it and put it on the ground and Dave's crew's gotta come pick it up. They don't even remove it, they just cut it down. That's the only time National Grid is going to take down a dead tree. The rest of it is at the town's expense. And you all know we got hit with these gypsy moths for the last 2 to 3 years, and they killed a lot of trees, particularly the oak trees, the timber ash insect and so on. It's killed them. To show you how much, Dave and I have been working with a program called GIS. As you can tell, I'm not on the computer. What can I say? Dave and I are working with Pioneer Valley Planning Commission. They are our consultants that we use. If we were a town like Chicopee, Holyoke, or somewhere, we'd have full-time people to do this, but we don't, so we hire consultants. This is a tree here. Now, I'm gonna blow this up a bit and see if I can move it around just a little. No, that's the bottom. See, I can move this one up here? Yeah, there I can. You see this number here? That's how many trees Dave has identified overhanging utility wires, and he's just halfway finished with the town.
How many is that?
250. So if I was to scroll here, I could show you 250 different photos of dead trees, because they're all marked by longitude and latitude, so we know that. That's where the GIS is. Okay, also with that, I could come down here and I could pick a certain spot like this and I could highlight it and it would show there's the wires, and there's the dead tree in the middle, if I knew exactly which one I wanted to look at. So it's a program that we use back and forth to situate stuff. We also use it for stormwater and other stuff to identify what the catch basins are, when's the last time they were cleaned and stuff like that. So we have, as of today, 250 dead trees overhanging utility lines that National Grid will not take down. Northern Tree has told us they will charge us between $1,000 and $1,500 to take down a tree. There's no way Dave's crew can take down 250 trees. There's just no way. So it's gonna have to be subcontracted out. That's what the $100,000 is for. Last I talked to the Belchertown DPW guy, they were up over 800 trees. We're at 250 for half the town. But we did the worst half of the town first. The gypsy moths are coming from the east and heading west. So we did the east part of the town first. We figured that would be the worst part of the town. But that's where the 100,000 we're asking for coming from. And again, I don't know how much they're gonna let me show at special town meeting on this, but people who know me, I'm not afraid to share the information. I'm fully transparent. You got it, you want it, here it is. This is what your money's being spent on. Okay, I'm gonna close this one, and I'll minimize this one in case somebody wants to see something later. And I will close this one. And I need to go back here to go on the next article. Article 8, to see if the town will vote to authorize an appropriate borrower transfer from available funds the sum of $50,000 or greater or lesser for the purpose of funding the purchase and installation of electric vehicle chargers. Again, before you get a grant, you have to have the money up front. I'm saying we, the town, through the Energy Committee, have applied for 2 grants for electric vehicle chargers. Green Community requires once a vehicle becomes commercially available, you have to purchase it with a certain miles per gallon. Ford last year came out with a hybrid police vehicle. Because Ford was the only U.S. manufacturer of a hybrid police vehicle, the state says, we're not going to make you buy you one this year. You got a waiver. But hopefully Dodge or Chevy's going to come out with a hybrid next year. In other words, they don't want to have one company get it all. Little competition there. So we know the hybrids are coming. We have a hybrid out there already at the boat. On the vote, excuse me, with the V, not the B. Eventually, the 6 police cruisers are all gonna be hybrids. So, while the state is offering EV charger grant money, let's take the money today instead of taking all the money out of our pocket in the future. On the ones at the safety complex, Mass DEP is willing to fund 60% of the equipment. That $50,000 is our 40% of the equipment. On the new library, because of the leading energy engineering design, the lead design, we're gonna put a couple over there. The state Mass DOER has a program. They will fund 80% of the equipment and the installation at the new library. So, while the money's there, let's take it. So we're gonna get away pretty cheap for $50,000 to get 6 EV charging stations. You go online, you can't buy them. You can't buy 6 for $50,000, including the installation. Because each one is 40 amp, if I remember correctly. And what is making this a little more costly for us than normal, each EV chargers require a 40 amp circuit breaker. Anybody want to guess how many blank breakers are left in the safety complex? 1. So that means we gotta put another 200 amp panel in the safety complex. So we can put the EV chargers in. So that's costing us a couple $1,000s more to put a new panel in. But eventually, the safety complex is gonna need more circuit breakers. So we figured, why not use some of the money we can get in this grant, put it in there, and have it there for their use later? So that's your 50,000 for the EV chargers. Okay, and I didn't put no pictures of EV chargers. You've seen them enough. I put them up enough. We'll go into Article 9, to see if the town will vote, authorize, or appropriate, or borrow or transfer available funds, a sum of 75,000 or greater or less for the purpose of funding and consulting service of dredging Dufresne's Park Pond. To be perfectly honest with you, I don't know that much about it. Lou Barry is presenting it. I don't know if you know anything about it or not. Okay.
Not enough.
It has to be dredged, so they need the $75,000. The money was in the account. It was, but it was removed for Forage Pond, because Forage Pond Dam was in worse shape than Dufresne Park. I think you remember that, George.
Oh, I do.
Okay, and if anybody wants to know, the trees and all the stuff has been cleared away from the Forage Pond Dam. They can start inspecting it now. We should have the final inspection report by March or April of next year. But that, we had to get the money from somewhere, and that's where it came from. Now we need to replenish the Dufresne's Park money to get it properly dredged. To see if the town will authorize, appropriate, to borrow or transfer available funds of $50,000 for the purpose of funding Dufresne Park repairs. Again, Lou Barry exactly knows the exact repairs. I know they took a $13,000 volt wire out of there that ran across, and they're taking the telephone poles out, and I think will finish it, but again, I'm not exactly sure.
I believe this will also cover some repairs and updates to the kitchen.
Repairs and update to the kitchen. She's more familiar with what goes on with the park than I am. She's part of the park committee and stuff like that. So the kitchen that we rent out at Dufresne's Park needs some repairs and work, so they're gonna do something there. I can tell you that the energy committee is planning on changing all the lights at Dufresne's Park to LED. Will go in the next grant, as long as they pass that article on Article 1, so we can apply for a grant. If they don't pass the article, we can't apply for a grant. And the last one here on Article 11, to see if the town will vote to authorize and appropriate and borrow and transfer from available funds the sum of $7,000, a greater or lesser amount, for the purpose of funding the purchase of a sander for the public buildings. Has anybody seen the parks lately? They think they look a lot better?
Absolutely.
Okay, the reason they look better is we now have 2 town employees to work on facilities in the park. Because we have 2 people, we also have an extra vehicle. One of the vehicles does not have a sander in the back. So why not use it in the winter with the other one? Currently, we only have 1 sander that does the COA, the up on the hill, the annex, the old library, the safety complex, the new library. It's all done with 1 plow truck and 1 sander, but now since we got another truck, we want to put a sander on it so we have dual use. And if you want to look at the bed of that old one, they just had it redone with aluminum. It looks great, and we only paid $5,000 instead of buying a whole new truck for $48,000. If my theory, and Jen will tell you, I'm a pain in the butt when it comes down tear down analysis reports and all that. If we can repair or overhaul anything at 70% or less than the cost of a new one, we're gonna do it. It worked in the military, where I did it there. We have B-52s that have been flying since the 1950s. Helicopters have been flying since the 1960s and so on. If you take care, proper preventive maintenance, and you keep them updated, the stuff will last. Just like we have buildings in here, 1 and 200 years old, they were properly taken care of, they'd be lasting. 70% is my thing, and she'll tell you, I asked for all the data. I want to see it. I read everything.
Makes for a long meeting.
But I do read it all ahead of time. With that being said, that is Article 11. That's all 11 articles that will be on there. My biggest takeaway from tonight is, how can we reword Article 2 to allow a 40,000 square foot building lot and decrease the setback? That's my take back. I learned that tonight. And I will work over the weekend to see what I can do it, but I'm gonna have to go to the bylaws to see, in the Board of Health regulations, to see on how small we can shrink that setback to put a building lot in front of it. Any more questions? Anybody want to comment? I mean, I think that these sessions before an annual or special town meeting are important because we can explain more stuff to you. You don't get to explain much at an annual or special town meeting. And as long as I'm gonna be on this board, I'm gonna continue doing it. If people do it after me or not, I don't care. I got nothing to hide. Do you prefer this, or is this a waste of your time? You like it? Okay. I plan on keep doing it, and I don't mind taking questions. Even if they're against me, I don't care.
I just wish more people would show up to hear this. When you're talking about Article 11, most people don't realize that that particular truck was probably the one truck in the entire fleet of this town that had the poorest care and maintenance of any vehicle. I would not have spent a dime on this truck, but new tires, new motor, and now this new body, we're gonna get our money's worth out of that truck again.
Exactly.
Now, I've driven that truck when I plow snow for the town in the winter.
Mhm.
And it's still a valuable piece of equipment. And like you said, it beats the heck out of spending 50 grand for a new truck. I'm looking at replacing mine to the tune of around 65.
That's correct.
And it's ludicrous that I would even consider spending that kind of money.
Mhm.
But the sander is a vital piece of equipment for that, because your building department now has additional property to take care of and additional responsibilities. So that's going to be a valuable piece of equipment.
It is gonna be a valuable piece of equipment, and that truck came from the school originally, didn't it, George?
Now, it was bought as a town building maintenance truck.
I remember seeing it parked at the school a lot. That's
Oh,
what it
yeah.
It was parked at the school, they were using it over there for maintenance, but, you know, just like when they ended shared services between the school and the town, the school got all brand new stuff, the town got all the leftover stuff. I mean, that's just a fact.
Yeah.
So,
Jim,
Go
one thing that I am going to say on this here, and perhaps you should say at the town meeting, is that the town made an excellent decision in hiring a full-time, hiring full-time cadre to do this building maintenance and the park maintenance. It's been money well spent, and as you know, I'm cheap.
but also within that being said, the town of Granby used to have a park and recreation department at one time. But going through annual and special town meeting, what was being said? Save the money for the school. And the park and recreation department went away, right, George?
Correct.
That's how it went away. Last year, excuse me, we were able to bring it back, and we want the people to see how good it's doing, and we want to keep it. But when we go to annual and special town meeting, if people do not come out and vote, a small special interest group can have their own agenda and vote it down. We could lose the Parks Department again. We could lose anything again. And it's very important. I know I've heard George a number of times tell everybody, it's very important to come out and vote, because The max we're gonna get, we've gotten, is 15% of the registered voters at any annual or special town meeting. So it's not hard to get a special interest group in there to move the money around at their pleasure. I love to see a lot more people. That's one reason that I'm willing to do stuff like this, to try and encourage the people to get out there. I want the people to come to vote. I don't want the people to come in there, because a lot of them complain, I don't know what to vote for, because I don't have all the information.
That's
So,
what's nice about this.
yeah. And a lot of people have come up to me and said, well, how do I vote on this and how do I vote on that? I say, that's entirely up to you. I can't tell you how to vote. Well, how are you gonna vote? I says, well, based upon these articles I'm looking at today, I know how I'm gonna vote. But once they hit the floor, if they get amended, I don't know how I'm gonna vote. So I can't really give you the guideline. But if you wanna watch me when I put my hand up, that's when I'm voting yes, and I put no, it's down, I'm voting no. I mean, I'm just being honest, George.
No, I agree with you, Jay.
Yeah, and I wish more people would come out and vote. I'm not telling anybody how to vote. I have my own opinions, and everybody should have. I'm trying to give everybody the most information I can.
I wish more people would drive into the park.
And see the difference in both parks here in town from 3 years ago, when there wasn't anybody taking care of these places, and to see what's there today, it's amazing.
Yes.
And a lot of the credit goes directly to Lou Barry. He's
Yes.
he's a driving force
Yes.
on this.
I would, and he's the chairman of the Parks Oversight Committee that is appointed by the Board of Selectmen, okay? And I give credit to the entire committee. Lou is the chairman, you know, so he's, like you said, the driving force. And I know what chairman's like, chairman of the Select Board, chairman of Energy Committee, chairman of Economic Development Committee. Brian's gonna be it pretty soon, right, Brian? The mayor. If you have any suggestions on how I can approve this, you can let me know. But as far as the GCAM folks out there, I think we should probably adjourn this meeting, and somebody hears something they want to tell the people on GCAM before Alex turns the video off.
Come and vote.
Why don't you remind them of the day and time?
Oh, okay.
Come and vote.
Jen, I'll let you have the honors.
Oh, I get the honors?
Yeah,
Special town meeting, Monday, October 28th.
7 p.m.
7 p.m. Be there by
Be there.
6:45.
to register. Yep. It's very important for everybody to come out. Thank you all, and we appreciate it, and give us any comments you want. If you can approve it in any way, we'd be happy to do it.